video, we like to simplify this given um, expression, which is the fourth root of negative 16. So here we have, here I'm going to use two methods. Here I'm going to say this is my method 1. And I'm going to give you the method 2 after this. Now for method 1, here we have the fourth root of negative 16. This can be written as the fourth root of here we can have the negative 16 as plus or negative 4i squared. Why do we have this? Because the rules of complex numbers says that our I is square root of negative 1. And here, if you have your I squared, it's going to be the square root of negative 1 all squared, which is going to be negative 1. So our I is negative 1. So we have this given expression. Now to further simplify this, here we can have this as plus or minus 4i squared. What about the fourth root? The fourth root can be written as 1/4. This is mathematically possible. Okay, so here we can divide 2 and 4. So here we can have the plus or minus 4i to the power of half. How is this possible? Here we have 2 times 1/4. So this is going to be half. That's why we have this. Now, to further simplify this, our focus is now going to be on this last expression that we've gotten. So this can be written as the square root of plus or minus 4i. So the first thing I did was to get rid of the fourth root to make it to be a square root. But now looking at this can further be break down to 2 times plus or minus 2i. Now, looking at this carefully, by the law of indices, the law of sort, when you have square root of a times b, you can differentiate them by saying the square root of a times the square root of b. So with that, I can recall that we are trying to simplify the fourth root of negative 16. So with this, I can break it down as the square root of 2 times the square root of plus or minus 2i. Now here, I'm having the square root of 2 multiplied by the second expression here. I can make it this way, which is 1 plus or minus 2i minus 1. Okay? Because 1 minus 1 can get rid of themselves. So you're going to have plus or minus 2i. Now, something is interesting here. Here I'm going to have the square root of 2. And here, I'm going to have 1 can be written as 1 squared plus or minus 2i. And this negative 1 can be written as plus I squared. Why? If you look up there, we have that our I squared is negative 1. So we have this. So why do we have this expression? If you look at this expression, it's like having a squared, okay, it can be plus or negative, depends, okay, on 2ab plus b squared. This is what I've gotten. So this can be factored as a plus or minus b all squared. So in this case, my a is going to be 1 and my b is going to be I. Now here I'm going to have the square root of 2 times the square root of 1 plus or minus I all squared. So for step 1, finally, I'm going to have plus or minus the square root of 2 into parentheses 1 plus or minus I, because this square will cancel out the square root. So this is my answer for step 1, or for method 1. Now what about method 2, which is more explanatory and more mathematically proven? Now for method 2, we are interested in getting the fourth root of negative 16. The first I'm going to do here is let y to be equals to 4 root negative. Here we have let y to be equals to 4 root negative 16. Okay, so here you can say that y equals to negative 16 to the power of 4. Simplifying further here, this can be, if you raise to power both sides to 4, then I can have y to the power of 4, okay, to be equals to, this is going to cancel out this 4th root, and this is going to be negative 16, which looks somehow interesting. So here I can have y to the power of 4 plus 16 equals to 0. And here I can have y to the power of 4 minus negative 16 equals to 0. Okay. And here I can have my y to the power of 4 as y squared, taking 2 out here, which is still the same thing as y to the power of 4, minus 4i all squared equals to 0. Why do I have this? Recall that I squared is negative 1. Okay, so my negative 16 is the same thing as negative 1 times 16. So negative 1 is I squared, and 16 is 4 squared. So this is why I can have this. Now, the next thing to do, looking at this critically, there's something we call difference of two squares when you have a squared minus b squared, which is going to be a plus b, a minus b. Difference of two squares. So I'm going to apply this rule here. So here I'm going to have y squared plus 4i, and here I'm going to have y squared minus 4i equals to 0. And from this, by breaking this down into difference of two squares, one can easily see from this first expression here that we have y squared plus 4i equals to 0. And the second expression here we have y squared minus 4i equals to 0. So for the first part, we can have y squared to be equals to negative 4i. And for the second expression here, we can have y squared equals to 4i. Now for this, squaring root both sides. So here I can have my y to be equals to the square root of a negative 4i. So this is the first value for y. And for the second value for y here, I can have my y to be equals to the square root of 4i. I'm going to call this y1 and I'm going to call this y2. Yeah, to differentiate between the two. Now let's break it down. So my y1 here is going to be 2 times negative 2i, which is still going to give negative 4i. And my second one here is going to be 2 times 2i. Now, here, I can have my y1 to be square root of 2 times square root of negative 2i. This is the rule of sort. And for the second one here, breaking down this square root, we can have square root of 2 times square root of 2i, which make more sense. Now, for the first part here, I have the square root of 2 times the same thing I did with the previous method, 1 minus 2i minus 1. So I'm going to do the same thing here, which is the square root of 2 times the square root of 1 plus 2i minus 1. Now, here, for my y1 here, I'm going to have the square root of 2 times 1 minus 2i plus I squared. Okay, and here, I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So I'm going to have my y2 to be square root of 2 times 1 plus 2i plus I squared. So for my y1 here, I'm going to have the square root of 2 times the square root of 1 minus I all squared. And here you have the square root of 2 times the square root of 1 plus I squared. So y1 is going to be, from here, plus or minus the square root of 2, 1 minus I. And my y2 is going to be plus or minus the square root of 2 times, or you can say in parentheses, 1 plus I. So these are the values for y. Thank you very much for watching. I know this takes some steps that you could even imagine. If you have an alternative way to do this, you can put it in the comment section. Let's learn from one another. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye.